The fall that changed everything. My name is Juliana Reynolds. I'm 35 years old, and the person I used to call my whole world walked right past my hospital bed without even looking me in the eyes. I wasn't expecting a parade, a bouquet of flowers, or a dramatic cry of concern, but I certainly wasn't expecting silence. Cold, sharp silence like I had never existed. 2 weeks earlier I had been hit by a distracted driver while crossing the street after work. I work in publishing, or, at least, I did. That night, I had just finished editing a manuscript and was walking home, coffee in one hand and my phone in the other. I remember the sound of screeching tires, then black. When I woke up in the hospital, my ribs were cracked, my leg was broken, in 2 places, and I had stitches running across my cheek. But the pain wasn't just physical, it was emotional, lonely, unmoored.uc. I had spent most of my adult life trying to be everything for one person. My little sister, Sophia, she's 6 years younger, beautiful, brilliant, magnetic. When we were kids, I used to say she was born under a luckier star. She made everyone laugh. I made everyone lists. Our mother passed away when Sophia was 11 and I was 17. I gave up my college scholarship to stay home and raise her. I worked 2 jobs while doing night classes just so I could pay for her school uniforms, lunches, and violin lessons. Not because I had to, but because I wanted her to dream bigger than I ever could. When she turned 18 and got accepted to a private university in another state, our dad, who had long since drifted out of the picture, refused to co-sign the student loan. I didn't hesitate. I signed the papers. I emptied my savings. Every month for 4 years, I sent a check. Rent, tuition, books, food. I told her, don't worry about anything. Just focus on becoming everything you're meant to be. She promised, one day I'll make you proud. And for a while I believed her when she graduated magna cum laude with a degree in architecture. I was the only one cheering from the front row. I paid for her cap and gown, her graduation photos, and even her moving van when she landed her first job in Chicago. I helped her furnish her apartment. I wired money every time she forgot to pay a bill or needed just a little help. I didn't realize how much I had given until I had nothing left to give. The day of the accident, I had been planning to visit Sophia the following weekend. She'd just returned from a vacation in Europe and hadn't called me once. When I texted her that morning, all I got was a single word, busy. So I didn't tell her about the accident. At first I didn't want to worry her. Then, when the hours turned to days, I waited. I wanted to see if she'd notice my absence, if she'd wonder why I hadn't sent my usual Sunday night check-in. Didn't. It wasn't until our cousin Diana, who worked at the hospital, posted a photo of me in recovery on Instagram that Sophia finally showed up. She breezed in wearing designer sunglasses and holding an iced matcha. She didn't hug me, she didn't cry, she didn't even ask what happened. She stood there at the foot of my bed like I was a stranger. Then she turned to the nurse and asked, "Is visiting hours over?" I couldn't believe it. This was the girl who used to fall asleep on my chest during thunderstorms. The one who used to write me birthday cards saying I was her real mom. Now she looked at me like I was nothing more than an obligation. That was the moment something broke. Not in my body, but in my spirit. The day after Sophia's visit, if you could even call it that, I asked the nurse to stop listing me as having any visitors at all. It wasn't the paparazzi I wanted to avoid. It was her. Every beep of my phone monitor, every ache in my hip, every echo in the whitewashed room made me ask the same question. How did I become invisible to someone I sacrificed so much for? Diana visited me that evening. She sat down quietly and peeled an orange, handing me a piece like we were still kids sharing secrets at a sleepover. She didn't even sit down. I whispered. Diana didn't ask who I meant. She just nodded, eyes down. She's been different lately. Different, I scoffed. She's been distant, cold, unrecognizable. Diana paused. Jewel, can I ask you something and you promise not to get mad? I nodded. Do you think maybe she doesn't know how to handle seeing you vulnerable? You've always been the strong one. I closed my eyes. There it was again, the narrative I had unintentionally built my entire life around. The strong one, the dependable one, the one who fixes, never breaks. But what happens when the fixer is the one who needs fixing? In the quiet hours of that second night, I replayed everything. The time I stayed up sewing her a costume the night before her 5th grade play. The scholarships I declined so I could pay her rent. The countless birthdays I skipped celebrating so she could have hers in style. And now, I couldn't even get her to sit down beside me 3 days later. A social worker named Camila came to my room with a clipboard. "I'm here to discuss your discharge plan," she said kindly. "Do you have someone who can assist you during recovery? You'll need help for at least 2 weeks." I hesitated. I had plenty of people I had once helped, but who could I honestly say would help me? I don't know, I admitted. "Anyone. You live with family, sister." I let the silence answer for me. Camila tried to reassure me. "We can refer you to short-term home assistance programs, but the paperwork takes time." That night, I texted Sophia, "Hey, discharge is this Friday. Doc says I need help for a bit. Can you come?" The message was marked read, but no reply came. Not that night, not the next. Friday arrived. A wheelchair was waiting. My discharge papers were signed and I still had no idea where I would go. I reached into my bag and pulled out a wrinkled paper, Diana's address. She had already offered, but I hadn't wanted to impose now. It wasn't about pride anymore. It was about survival. I called her. "Is the office still open?" Her voice was soft. "Of course it is. Come home, Jewel." I wheeled out of that hospital with a fractured leg, 6 cracked ribs, 24 stitches, and a heart that had been bruised far worse than my body. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. But I knew something in me had changed. I was no longer willing to keep giving love to someone who had learned to treat it like a free subscription, valuable only until it expired. Diana's guest room smelled like chamomile and cinnamon. She'd made the bed with flannel sheets, placed my favorite lavender lotion on the nightstand, and even printed out a TV guide in large fonts so I could flip channels from bed without squinting. She didn't ask questions. She just said, "Rest, we'll talk when you're ready." That first weekend, I slept more than I'd slept in years. By Sunday afternoon, I found myself flipping through a dusty photo album Diana had left on the ottoman. There we were, Sophia and me in matching dresses at the county fair. Me with braces, her missing teeth. The caption Diana had scrawled underneath read, "2 peas, 1 pod." I stared at the photo for a long time. On Monday, a large manila envelope arrived addressed to me. No return address. I opened it and inside was a thick stack of folded receipts, invoices, printouts, and bank statements. At first, I didn't understand. Then I saw the note. "In case you ever forget what you've done for her. You shouldn't need proof, but sometimes we do." I thumbed through them slowly. $2,800 for tuition. Installment number $3,950 for dorm furniture, $108.67 for prescription glasses. She accidentally broke $400 transfer labeled emergency. Her car got towed. And on it went. Hundreds of entries. Thousands of dollars. Years of love in spreadsheet form. It was the most painful love letter I had ever received. Diana walked in and found me crying. She sat beside me and wrapped an arm around my shoulder. "You're not crazy, you know." I nodded slowly, the tears too thick to speak. "You gave her everything, and you've been gaslit into thinking that makes you demanding or controlling, but it doesn't. It just means your love had boundaries and now she's punishing you for drawing them." Later that evening I got a voicemail from Sophia. Didn't even know she had called. I'd stopped checking. Her voice was light, carefree. "Hey, just wanted to see if you needed anything. I've been slammed at work and couldn't stop by, but maybe next week. Let me know." Next week. I had nearly died. I had needed her last week. Not some potential future moment where she could perform her duty and collect a few guilt-free sister points. I didn't reply, not out of anger, but out of clarity. Some relationships are fueled by history, others by habit. But love, real love, must be fueled by presence. And Sophia wasn't present anymore. Not in my life, not in my healing, not even in the role I had desperately wanted her to grow into. A few nights later, Diana brought out 2 glasses of wine and we sat on the porch. "You know," she said, "people think the biggest betrayals are loud, but the quiet ones hurt more." I nodded. "It's like being erased silently." Over time, she handed me the glass. "So, what are you going to do?" I thought for a long moment, and then I said the words I hadn't allowed myself to say before. "Done chasing someone who's running away from me with both hands full of everything I gave her." The message came on a Thursday evening, nearly a week after I'd received that chirpy voicemail from Sophia. "Jewel, want to come to dinner at my place? I made a reservation. Let's catch up." My treat. I stared at the screen, emotionless. There was no mention of the accident. No acknowledgement of her silence. No apology. Just dinner. As if we were old friends trying to reconnect over pasta. Diana walked into the living room just as I was rereading the message for the 5th time. She finally reached out. I nodded. "Dinner, her treat. She's trying," Diana said gently. "No," I said, sharper than I meant to. "She's performing." Diana raised an eyebrow. "She's not inviting me because she misses me," I continued. "She's inviting me because she's starting to realize I might actually be gone, that my absence isn't temporary." But I said yes, not because I was ready to forgive her, but because I needed to see in person whether there was anything left to salvage. That Saturday, Diana helped me dress. We chose a soft blue blouse, simple earrings. I still moved slowly, one crutch in hand, my steps measured and deliberate, but my spine was straighter than it had been in months. We arrived at the restaurant, a sleek fusion bistro downtown, 15 minutes early. Sophia was already seated, scrolling through her phone, perfectly styled, manicured, dressed in soft silk. She didn't notice me until I was right in front of her. "Jewel," she exclaimed, standing to hug me awkwardly, barely touching my arm. I sat down and studied her. Not angrily, not with resentment, just like someone seeing clearly for the first time. The waiter arrived and took our orders as he walked away. Sophia smiled and said, "I'm really glad you came. I've been so swamped lately. You know how it is." I said nothing. She stirred her cocktail and launched into a story about a new client at her design firm, something about a rooftop layout and a difficult timeline. I nodded when appropriate, smiled where expected. but all I could think about was how surreal it felt to sit across from someone I had once raised and now barely recognized. Finally, I cleared my throat. Sophia, I said, I need to ask you something. She blinked. Okay, why didn't you show up when I needed you? Her fork paused in midair. I did, she replied quickly. I came to the hospital for 2 minutes. I interrupted, and you didn't even ask if I was okay. She set her fork down, eyes shifting. I didn't know what to say. She mumbled. So you said nothing. Sophia sighed. I was overwhelmed. Jewel, I'm not good with emotions. You've always known that. No, I said. I always excused that. She looked up, surprised by my tone. I made excuses for your absence, your coldness, your forgetfulness. I told myself you were just busy, just distracted, just tired. But at some point, Sophia not showing up becomes a decision. She went quiet. The waiter brought our entrees. We didn't touch them. I continued, voice calm but unshakable. I don't need grand gestures. I don't need perfection. I just needed you to care enough to try. And you didn't. Her eyes welled up. I didn't know how. That's the thing, I said. You never asked. We sat in silence, the weight of truth pressing on both of us. When she finally spoke, her voice was small. I'm sorry. For what? I asked. She swallowed. For taking you for granted. For disappearing. For assuming you'd always be there no matter how I treated you. Tears slipped down her cheeks. I didn't realize how much you did for me. Not really. I thought you liked being in control. I thought you thought love was a transaction I finished for her, but it's not. The bill came. She paid. We hugged goodbye. It was tentative, awkward, but real. As I stepped outside into the cool night, Diana's car waiting by the curb, I knew something had shifted. Not everything was healed, but something old had broken, and something new had quietly begun. Two nights after the dinner, I couldn't sleep. Not because I was in pain. The physical healing had come a long way, but because of everything left unsaid. The look on Sophia's face when I said you thought love was a transaction played over and over in my mind. Not with guilt, just wait. There's a difference between forgiving someone and pretending it never hurt. That night, I reached for the bottom drawer of the desk in Diana's guest room, the one she'd told me was full of old junk. Inside, beneath some dusty sketchbooks and faded postcards, I found a spiral-bound journal with a cracked blue cover. My handwriting was scrawled across the front. Sophia minus 2009 to... I opened it. The first page was dated the summer Sophia got accepted to college. I had just turned 21. Sophia got in, full of joy, full of light. She doesn't know I took a second job to help cover the gap. Doesn't matter. Watching her face light up was worth every hour of sleep. I'll lose this. So master, another page. She forgot my birthday again. That's 5 years in a row now. I don't think it's intentional. She's just floating. I keep telling myself she'll grow into the gratitude, but what if she doesn't, and then sent $500 for rent? Told her it was a gift. It was my emergency fund, but I'll rebuild it. That's what big sisters do, right? We rebuild what others borrow. Each page hurt more than the last dot, not because I regretted the love I gave, but because I could see, in black ink, how many times I gave it hoping someday she'd see me. Not just as the dependable one, but as a person. Diana found me still reading at sunrise. She poured me tea and sat beside me on the bed. You remember that story about the frog in the boiling pot? She asked. I nodded. Yeah, it doesn't notice the temperature rising until it's too late. Well, she said gently, that's how I've watched you with Sophia. You kept giving and adjusting, not realizing it was burning you. Closed the journal and held it in my lap. Do you think I made her dependent on me? Diana looked thoughtful. I think you tried to love her the best way you knew how, but maybe it wasn't the way she needed to be loved, or the way you needed to be loved back. That day, I made a decision. I went to a print shop and had the entire journal photocopied. I placed it in a manila envelope. No note, no explanation, just the truth laid bare in my own handwriting. Then I mailed it to Sophia, not as an accusation, not as revenge, but as a mirror. 1 week later, I got a letter in return. Not a text, not a voicemail. A handwritten letter from her. Jewel, I didn't know you kept a journal. I read every word, twice. The part that broke me when you said you kept giving and hoping I'd finally see you. I think I've spent my whole life only looking at the things in front of me, opportunities, distractions, comfort, and never the person holding the ladder. You didn't just help me climb. You held me up when I didn't even know I was falling. I'm sorry for taking and forgetting and assuming. If you're willing, I want to try again. Not as the sister who always receives, but the one who's ready to finally give. Love, Sophia. I cried for hours because it wasn't perfect, but it was real. And maybe, finally, that was enough. The first time Sophia showed up at Diana's house after sending that letter, she brought a grocery bag. Not a gift, not flowers, not some extravagant gesture. Groceries, fresh vegetables, soup ingredients. A loaf of sourdough she said she learned to bake from YouTube. I figured you might be tired of takeout, she mumbled, not meeting my eyes. She didn't know that the small act, a bag of groceries, was the most meaningful thing she'd done in years. We didn't jump straight into tearful hugs or dramatic forgiveness. Instead, we stood side by side in Diana's kitchen, chopping carrots in awkward silence. And for once, it wasn't the silence of resentment, it was the silence of trying. "Do you need help stirring that?" she asked halfway through. I shook my head. "You can handle it." She smiled faintly. "Okay." Later that night, we sat on the couch with 2 bowls of soup between us. She glanced at the crutch propped against the wall. "You're getting stronger." "I am." She nodded. "That's good. I have started going to therapy, just so you know." I looked up. "Really?" she said, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "I told my therapist I spent years being the passenger in my own life, and that every time you offered to drive, I just handed you the wheel." I didn't speak then, she added. "But I think if I had stayed the passenger forever, I would have blamed you for never letting me lead, even if I never asked to." That hit me harder than I expected because she wasn't wrong. In one of my own therapy sessions a few weeks prior, my therapist had asked me, "Juliana, what does love look like to you when you're not rescuing someone?" I had stared at her, stunned because I didn't know the answer. My whole life, love had been the rescue, the late-night drives, the tuition payments, the picking up of pieces, even ones I didn't break. So what did love look like when both people stood on solid ground? That question lingered until one night Sophia texted me out of nowhere. "I just paid off my first credit card. It's small, but it's mine. Thought you'd want to know." I stared at the message, and then without hesitation I replied, "I'm proud of you, not because you did it for me, but because you did it for yourself." She responded with a voice memo. In it, I could hear the quiver in her voice. I didn't know I needed to hear that until just now. "Thank you." That's when it clicked for me. Love without rescue is love without conditions. It's being proud without ownership, support without enabling, presence without pressure. Sophia kept showing up, not with gifts, but with accountability. She asked questions about my recovery. She asked how she could actually help, and not just the way she assumed I wanted help. She started budgeting, cooking, taking small steps in her own life that made it hers, not just an extension of mine. And slowly, the resentment between us softened, because we stopped playing our old roles. She stopped being the dependent. I stopped being the martyr. We started just being sisters. Diana noticed the shift before either of us did. "You laugh differently when she's around now," she said one day. "How so?" "It's real. It's lighter. It sounds like you're not holding your breath anymore." I smiled, because maybe, for the first time in years, I wasn't. It's strange how healing often comes not with fireworks, but with rhythm. By month 3 of my recovery, Sophia and I had settled into a gentle cadence, a kind of emotional muscle memory we'd never had before. She no longer treated me like a backup plan, and I no longer treated her like a fragile mission I needed to complete. One Sunday afternoon, we were walking slowly through Lincoln Park. I still used a cane. Sophia matched my pace without a word. At one point, I paused to catch my breath. She didn't say, "Do you want to sit?" or "Are you okay?" She simply stood beside me, watching the geese on the pond. That was the moment I realized she had finally learned how to hold space, not fix, not explain, just be there. It was all I had ever wanted from her. Later, over coffee, she asked, "What do you remember about Mom?" The question caught me off guard. We didn't talk about our mother much. Her death had been sudden, a heart attack at 42. I had just turned 17. Sophia was 11, too young to understand how a single day could change everything. I remember her singing to herself when she washed the dishes. I said after a moment, "She had a beautiful voice, soft, like velvet." Sophia smiled. I forgot that I only remember her being tired. We sat in that shared memory for a while, neither of us needing to speak. It was one of the first moments we met as equals. 2 daughters, not a caretaker and a child. That same evening, I pulled out the old manila folder with the receipts. I hadn't opened it since the hospital. Sophia noticed. "Is that?" she asked, trailing off. I nodded the record. She reached over and placed her hand gently on top of mine. "You don't have to keep that anymore," she said quietly. "You've already given enough." I looked at her and realized she meant it, not as an apology, but as an acknowledgement. She finally saw the years, the weight, the cost, emotional, financial, spiritual, and she wasn't flinching from it anymore that night. I did something symbolic, quiet, but deeply freeing. I burned the folder, not in anger but in release. The papers curled, blackened, then crumbled into ash in Diana's backyard fire pit. Sophia sat beside me the whole time, silent. When it was done, she whispered, "I can't undo what I didn't see, but I can start seeing you now." I nodded. That's all I ever wanted. We began creating new rituals. Monthly brunches, her treat, Wednesday night movie marathons, popcorn and no phones, even silly things like sending each other memes with "reminds me of you" captions. They weren't grand gestures, but they were consistent. And consistency, I had learned, was love's most underrated form. One day, I got an email from her. Subject line, "Can I make a speech?" Inside was a draft of a toast she was preparing for a company party. She wanted to honor the person who had taught her what commitment looked like. The first line read, "I once had a sister who became my mother, my mentor, my mirror for too long. I looked into her and only saw my own reflection. But now I see her, really see her." I cried reading it. Not because it was perfect, but because she had written it without being asked, and for the first time in years, she didn't expect anything in return. 3 months after I torched the folder of receipts and almost 6 months since the accident, my 36th birthday crept onto the calendar. I didn't mention it. Birthdays had always felt like checklists anyway. Bake a cake, blow out candles, answer polite voicemails. But a week before the date, Sophia texted, "Keep the weekend free. Pack something warm but comfy. Trust me." I stared at those last 2 words, "trust me," and felt a surprising yes bloom in my chest. Friday, 5:45 p.m. Reunion Station. Diana dropped me at Chicago Union Station. Cane still in hand, but stride confident. Sophia waited inside beside a kiosk, hair in a messy bun, travel mugs of chai, balanced on a suitcase. When she turned and saw me, her smile was instinctive, unperformed. "Happy pre-birthday," she said, pressing a cup into my hand. "We've got a train to catch." To where she shook her head. Rule number 1 of surprise trips, no spoilers. We boarded the evening Amtrak heading north. As skyline glass gave way to dusky farmland, Sophia pulled a small notebook from her tote. "I made an itinerary," she admitted, cheeks pink. "Figured it's my turn to be the planner." I laughed, truly laughed, because the irony was sweet and healing all at once. Saturday, 8:10 a.m. The lake house. When the Uber wound down a pine-lined gravel road and a pale cedar cottage appeared, my breath caught. "This is Mom's lake," I whispered. Sophia nodded. I tracked down the old property owner. It was vacant this weekend, so I rented it. Thought we could rewrite some memories. Inside, the place had changed, new furniture, white painted beams, but the picture window facing the water remained. We spent the morning there under wool blankets, sipping coffee while fog lifted off the surface. No phones, no deadlines, just the hush of winter birds. Midday. Unpacked truths after lunch. We sat at the rickety kitchen table with 2 journals between Users and mine. We'd agreed to try something Diana's therapist suggested, reciprocal reading. We swapped books for 1 hour without interruption. Her pages stunned me, a budget tally with pride circles, therapy reflections, a letter she'd written to Mom about failing me. When the timer chimed, Sophia's eyes shimmered. "I never realized how loud your silence was," she said, voice trembling. "Whole pages where you felt alone and still chose to protect me. And I never realized how afraid you were that you'd disappoint me," I answered. Maybe we both worshipped an image instead of a person. We hugged out, the brittle, break at any moment kind, but the slow exhale of finally being safe in each other's arms. Evening candles and campfire night dropped early. Sophia led me outside where she'd arranged a fire pit, ringed by tea light. Jars of single-layer vanilla cake waited on a stump table. Frosting uneven but earnest. "No DJ, no rooftop, no $10,000 invoice," she joked, striking a match. "Just us." She lit 36 slim candles. The flames flickered in lake breeze, and for once, I didn't feel the need to wish for anything. "Make it anyway," she urged. I closed my eyes and thought, let this be the year I finally love, without losing myself. Then I blew a soft, steady breath. All the lights went out together. Midnight reflections wrapped in quilts beside orange embers. We traded memories under a dome of stars. "Sophia, remember when you stayed up sewing my prom dress after I spilled nail polish on it? Me, only because you tried to iron it dry and melted half the skirt." We laughed until tears slid down our cheeks, but they were good tears, the kind that rinse regret. At one point, Sophia grew quiet. "Jewel, I paid the first installment on your medical bills." My head snapped toward her. "You what?" "I sold some designer stuff, started a side gig drafting deck renovations. It's not everything, but let me contribute." The old me would have refused, telling her to save for herself. The new me inhaled, felt the sting of pride, then let it pass. "Thank you," I said simply, and I meant it. Sunday, 9:02 a.m., a promise in the guestbook, but we locked the cottage. Sophia set a leather-bound guestbook on the counter. "Write something," she asked. I penned, "Two sisters returned to the water and found reflection instead of ripples. Signed, Juliana and Sophia, finally rowing the same boat." Sophia added beneath, "No more passengers, only co-captains." We shut the door, laughter echoing down the porch steps. Train home. One last lesson back on the rails. Sophia rested her head on my shoulder. "You know what I learned this weekend?" "What?" "That gratitude isn't owed, it's chosen. And choosing it every day feels lighter than I thought." I looked out at the winter fields flashing by and realized the landscape inside me had thawed. Too, for the first time, I didn't fear the next mile of track, because wherever it led, we were for traveling there together.
When we got back to the city, everything looked smaller. The buildings still stretched high. The trains still screeched on the rails. And yet I walked slower, noticed more. The pace of our weekend at the lake had followed us like a calming echo. Diana picked us up from the station. She took one look at us and smiled. "You two look like you just rewrote your origin story," she said. We shared a glance. She wasn't wrong. That week, Sophia invited me to a panel where she was presenting on sustainable urban housing. It was her first time speaking publicly at her company. I sat in the second row, watching her click through slides with confidence I'd never seen before. After the applause, she looked right at me. "Everything I've built," she said, her voice steady, "started with the person who built me." Didn't realize I was crying until I felt the tissue Diana slipped into my hand. In therapy the next day, my counselor, Dr. Harlow, asked, "Do you feel like your relationship with your sister has been repaired?" I thought about that. "No," I replied honestly. "It hasn't been repaired. It's been rewritten. There's a difference. Repair implies fixing what was broken. Rewrite means creating something better from the beginning." One afternoon, while cleaning out my old files, I came across a list I'd made years ago. Things I'll never ask Sophia for. It included reimbursement for college, an apology for forgetting my birthday every year, an explanation for why she disappeared when I was at my lowest. I looked at the list and realized I didn't need it anymore. Not because I had all the answers, but because I had peace. Sophia started hosting family dinners once a month. Nothing extravagant, just warmth and enough food to make everyone feel full. She always asked me to bring something, even if it was just bread or a bottle of wine. She no longer assumed I'd do everything, and I no longer expected her to read my mind. We became sisters again, not defined by debts or duty, but by presence. On one of those nights, over bowls of spicy lentil stew, Sophia asked, "Do you think Mum would be proud of us?" I smiled. "She'd probably cry first, then lecture us for taking this long." Sophia laughed. "Yeah, that sounds about right." Then she added, "You know, I don't want to be just someone you forgave. I want to be someone you trust." I didn't answer right away. I just reached across the table and squeezed her hand. Because trust doesn't arrive in one grand gesture. It arrives meal by meal, step by step, breath by breath. As spring arrived, I returned to work, part-time, then full-time. My body healed faster than expected, but my heart healed on its own timetable. And then one Saturday morning, Sophia showed up at my apartment, breathless. "I have something to show you." She dragged me gently out the door to a community center on the south side, where she'd been volunteering. Inside, blueprints covered the walls. A new housing initiative. Affordable, green-conscious, community-driven. "My design," she said, pointing to a layout. "Fully approved." I looked at her, radiant, driven, and whole. "I didn't want to show you until I knew I could do it without needing you to fix anything," she added. I hugged her tightly. Not as a mother, not as a savior, just as her sister.